What's going on, everybody? My name is Monatui, and today we're bringing you guys another episode of our Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire Draft League Viability discussion. Of course, I am not alone. I am joined by my good buddy Schady. Please introduce yourself.
Holy shit, you did it for a 10th time. We tried this intro.
Okay.
Yes, I'm
also,
telling
I
you.
just realized my Week 11 PPL team is on the screen, so I'm going to have to blur that out later on. But go ahead, continue.
Very good job. Hi, I'm Schady. I still play draft format and I'm better than Mono because I lost to him.
Yep, that's how it works. That's exactly how it works. So, today we're going to be, you're actually going to take the lead on this one. We're starting off with a very fun Mon we both used. Good Mon.
The one that makes both of us very hard. And that's Manaphy. A lot of people still think it's the best Pokemon in draft format, which is a completely fair opinion. I don't have any opinion on that matter. I think everyone knows what Manaphy does, but I'm going to explain it real quick. Anyway, base 100 stats across the board are amazing. Doesn't make it a great, immediate power Pokemon, but it is arguably the best setup mon in draft format with Tailglow or Calm Mind. Tailglow 3 attacks just runs through teams combined with its natural bulk, speed, and decent power, and the incredible coverage that it gets. There's also the fact that it gets the ability Hydration, so you can run a set of Rest, Rain Dance, Scald, and Calm Mind. Was that right? Yeah. I thought I forgot to move there. And you can that can actually just straight up 6-0 people from Team Preview, and that's pretty gross if Pokemon can do that. And if you think you have a good defensive Manaphy check, you don't, and I can tell you that that's a fact, because it gets coverage for pretty much anything. Not like Ferrothorn, but you get HP Fire, which kills it at +3 anyway. It's very hard to check. It can also be just a straight up defensive Pokemon, a support Pokemon, gets Heal Bell, gets U-Turn, gets Knockoff. So you can run those kind of moves. I have done in the past, I don't know if you have. But yeah, I have it Manaphy for 2 seasons. It is an incredible Pokemon. It can sweep teams very, very easily. And it forces a ton of prep on your opponent's part. They probably need to dedicate 1, probably even 2 Pokemon straight up to dealing with Manaphy, probably at least 2. And then other things on his team need to make sure that Manaphy doesn't get the freest of setups in history. So it forces a ton of prep. It fills a lot of roles in that it is a bulky water, it is a Scald Spammer, obviously, because those are the same thing. I don't know why I'm saying that. It gives you an incredible setup sweeper, and it's usually around 1 pick. You usually want to keep this pick this thing round 1. It also has a couple of unusual options like dual screens and, as I said, Heal Bell, so you can do that. I wouldn't recommend it, but if you can find the right matchup where other things benefit a lot from dual screens Manaphy, then sure, go ahead. I won't hate you for it. In terms of team support, I guess I'll leave that to you because, yeah, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, so Manaphy, like you said, super good. Has a lot of things going for it. Team support around it, definitely a solid ground type to stop electric types. I like a lot of people like to pair this thing with a Powdon because obviously it's one of the best defensive stops to electric types in the game. I prefer pairing it with more offensive ground types like a Nidoqueen, Nidoking, Excadrill, things like that, just because if you're a +3 Manaphy, your opponent's electric type is probably going for an electric move. You don't have to risk that. If they go for a Hidden Power Ice expecting the ground type and you stay in, they could lose the game at that point. So they're usually going for the electric move. You do have a free switch in your ground type. And then you're applying immediate pressure with Manaphy, and then you're switching out and then applying immediate pressure with an offensive ground type. So you can do things like that. I would also recommend get a Scald switching on your team, because Manaphy doesn't want to switch into Scalds often unless you're a Rain Dance set, in which you can get rid of the burn easily, but it's just really annoying to have this thing burnt and get worn down, because you want to keep this thing relatively healthy and want to keep it bulky for as long as possible. Keep it bulky, it's an interesting way to put it, but you want this thing to be able to take hits when you need it to. Especially if you're the Tailglow set without Rain Dance. What else could this go for? Definitely a really good grass check as well. Things like Amoonguss, Crobat, Tangrowth is a pretty good pairing with it for anyone other than me. Even things like Goodra that have Sap Sipper, Miltank is even nice with it as well. So really anything that can just take on grass types or grass type attacks. My opinion of Manaphy has actually changed a little bit since I used it. So it's super good. But
it doesn't get Scald Burn?
Okay, not only it doesn't get Scald Burns, but it's an absolute hacks magnet. If you draft this thing, it's going to get absolutely screwed over. There are a couple logical reasons as to why that happens, and then there's reasons that, and there's also, it happens for no reason. So like the logical reasons is just its typing. It's a bulky water type, so you're gonna switch it into Scalds, gonna get burned a lot. You can switch into fire moves, gonna get burned a lot. You're gonna switch into ice moves, gonna get frozen, even though you should be running Scald.
Am I right, Joey? What?
It's a setup sweeper, so it's gonna get crit at some point.
Yeah.
But I don't know why, but it just doesn't get Scald burns. And
It doesn't.
It doesn't
I
get
think...
Scald burns. It gets crit a lot in certain situations.
Yeah.
It just... I don't know what it is about it. Like, especially, I think the first season that I had this thing, I think I got genuinely 1 out of 20-something Scald burns with this thing.
I think I have pretty much the same.
I don't know the exact number, but there was a game against Kelly where I clicked Scald at least, like, 15 times and I got 1 burn.
You got a 6-0, you stop complaining.
That being said,
Okay,
again, it is really good. I would recommend pairing it with another water type just because you don't want this thing being like your only bulky water type. Like a water ground type is fine, Seismitoad, Swampert, something along those lines. Scald Toxic set is also really good that some people use, just Scald Toxic, Rest Rain Dance. You can beat a lot of teams. You can build this thing Spadef or physically defensive if you're doing that. You can build this thing in a lot of different ways, EV-wise, you can be creative with it, but also it's just really good on its own. And using the standard Tail Glow or standard Calm Mindset are really, really good and will scare the hell out of people every time. So, yeah, that's
so
Manaphy.
like
What?
Back to the hack thing, real quick. I think I know of like 6 or 7 seasons of different people using it. They all didn't get any Scald burns, or they get like 5 combined, which is ridiculous. It doesn't get Scald burns. I don't know why. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, one of the benefits to Manaphy, even though you're not hitting hard from the get-go, you at least have a spammable move in Scald that should burn things, but it just doesn't. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I had Manaphy with Megalopony, which if you get that, you are incredibly lucky. So if you can, do that. I also had it with Sunny T and Seismitoad. Those 4 on the same team is really fucking good because you have 2 electric immunities that don't share a weakness. So electro types are going to be even more cautious against your team. They might not even bring it occasionally, which if they don't, then you're just in a great position. Also worth mentioning is definitely the sub Tail Glow set because that just sets up on a lot of things and it doesn't care if it can't really touch them. It's going to get to +6 and then just win.
Yeah, I also think we mentioned this Calm Mindset with Rain Dance beats like every Pokemon ever, like every Bulkymon ever that isn't immune to Scald. Like you beat Chansey, you beat Clefable, even if it's an unaware Clefable, you're limiting their Moonlights and then you beat them unless they crit you with Moonblast, which they probably will because it's a Manaphy. But
Amoonguss can beat you with Clear Smog, but even that...
Yeah, it can, but even then, like if you're +3 with Ice Beam, then you're gonna hurt it. You can always burn it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you can't, but you can burn it theoretically.
Yeah, the Amoonguss is checked to the comment set. It does nothing to the Tail set.
Yeah.
That's like another thing, man.
Mm-hmm.
If you know it's set, it might just be too late.
Yeah.
If you can't tell from team preview.
Yeah. So we spent a while on Manaphy, but there was a decent amount to go over on that thing. And the next one we're going to go over, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go over a mon that we didn't get to the first time, because the first time we recorded it, it wasn't in OU, and that is Azelf.
Oh yeah.
Because it was dropped, or it was added like right after we started the series, and we started it a while ago before we uploaded it, and that's Azelf. So, if you don't know why Azelf boosted to OU, it's because of that stupid hyper offense team with Bandit, Talonflame, Mega Pinsir, Dragonite, Scarfex, Drill, and then this thing to just set up lead Stealth Rock.
That's some really boring crap.
Okay, basically the whole point of the team was to just set up as quickly as possible, hit things as hard as possible, and it was just spammed throughout OLT. But it's probably not going to stay in OU because that team is starting to lose a little bit of traction, and it doesn't have too much else that other mons can't do other than being a very good Stealth Rocker with things like Skill Swap to set up on Mega Sableye. But in draft format, this is always a mon that I always really think about picking up, but I just never do. Just because it is really good. It has a really solid move pool. It gets, obviously, Psychic Stab on both sides, then Headbutt, Psyshock, Psychic. Has really good move coverage and like Dazzling Gleam, Energy Ball, Flamethrower, Fire Blast. On the physical side, gets things like Ice Punch, Knockoff, gets special setup in Nasty Plot, and I believe Calm Mind as well. Thunderbolt as well. It got a really good move pool. Also has some good supportive options as well. It's a very fast taunt user. It does get access to Stealth Rock, and it is a very good Stealth Rocker just because You are going to outspeed most things on your opponent's side of the field. You'll be able to get up rocks guaranteed, and then you can explode afterward. And with a base 125 special physical attack stat, you will be able to get off a very powerful explosion, which is always really nice. You of course have Fire Blast to hit certain steel types that the Psychic Stab is obviously resisted by. Again, very good nasty plot user. It is also a decent Scarfer in draft play as well. Just being able to outspeed other people's Scarfers, being able to outspeed very fast things and be able to clean up late game. Has access to U-turn for momentum, has access to things like Thunder Wave if you want to run that. I think this thing's biggest problem is being Pursuit Trap, that and it's not very bulky. Like 75, 70, 70 is not the worst thing in the world, but it's not great. Like, you don't want to run this thing defensive like you can with the other Psychic types, and I think that's one of the reasons why this thing doesn't go too often or too early, is people are typically thinking about picking up either Alakazam or a bulky Psychic type. So this thing doesn't typically end up getting picked too often. Not the most uncommon thing in draft, because it is very good and people know it's very good, but again, not the most common thing in the world. You can go ahead and continue onto this thing. I like this thing a lot, but you can go ahead. Just go ahead.
I mean, there isn't much to say anymore because you said like most stuff already, because you're a smart person. I just want to mention that the first listed moves in the viable moves is Detect, and no one knows why. It's interesting. Just, you know, little fact there. Yeah, I'm on the same boat as you. I always want to try or draft Azelf. It just never happens because I'm also one of the bulky-ish Psychic type people. I am the Mesprit guy, of course. But yeah, the thing, as you said, incredible offensive coverage. It doesn't have many switch-ins, like straight-up counters, if any. I guess like Skuntank, Drapion, kind of, but HP Ground is a thing. So it's just incredibly hard to switch into. And its biggest enemy is Pursuit, much like Gengar. It's very similar to that in that regard, even though, you know, mixed attack. It gets some other options like Trick. You can run like a Scarf U-turn variant. You know, initiative gaining is always cool, especially when you're a bad player. I like to click U-turn, so I'm a bad player. It also gets like dual screens and stuff like that. Trick Room if you want to go that route, and can set up Rain Dance. So like, it can be on sunny day even. So it can be a good support one as well. And that just makes it a fairly valuable Pokemon for your draft. But as you said, just be wary of Pursuit Trap, and then you should be fine with Azelf. And like, if your opponent doesn't have a Dark type, just kind of spamming Spec Psychic is also really fun because it's really fast and really fucking strong. So Azelf is a cool guy. I might draft it at some point. Who knows?
Yeah, no, it is a really cool mon. I guess the thing that people compare this thing most to is Alakazam, and they're kind of similar just in the fact that they're fast offensive Psychic types. Alakazam obviously has the speed and power advantage. Their move pools are relatively similar, though Azelf with Fire Blast, Alakazam with Focus Blast, but Azelf also with the capabilities of being physically offensive, whereas Alakazam cannot. This thing also has a couple other support options, like I mentioned, very good Suicide Bleed. It even gets, like I mentioned earlier, Skill Swap, which can help you versus things like Mega Sableye or Magic Bounce users, so you can guarantee your rocks. Also, Skill Swap is just always a cool option in general, if you can pull it off. This is a very good Pokemon. I would definitely recommend picking this thing up. Probably pair it with... Oh, what would you pair Azelf with, typically? Like, what's good? I guess Hazard Stack, but I say that with literally everything, because that's, like, just always a good option to have.
It was for everything. I think like just having good defensive options to support it, because like you're gonna come in with Azelf and you hurt things, and then you kind of want to have something you can switch in.
Yeah,
stuff.
gotcha. Probably a good.
Or just go straight hyper offense.
Yeah, probably a good knockoff switch as well. Good Dark type counter.
Yeah, Terrakion Azelf sounds really good.
Yeah, that does sound very good.
But Terrakion sounds good with everything because it's Terrakion.
Yeah. All right. So that is Azelf. Sorry we didn't cover this thing earlier, but again, it wasn't in the tier when we started this recording, but now it is, and so we're gonna. That's that. It's cool.
Cool. So, should I move on, I guess? Yeah, okay.
Cool. Alright, oh, this one.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Mega Manectric. Used to be everyone's love child in OU, I think. People used to really like the thing. It hasn't been used that much, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't play that much
I don't
OU.
see it too often. I know I used it a little while ago in a tournament. Tournament.
Words are hard.
Yeah. I used it recently in a tournament and did really well. It's still definitely viable in OU, but just electric types in OU haven't been that common.
Yeah. So, Mega Manectric is fast and strong, but it's really one-dimensional, really boring. But it's one of those Pokemon that does this one thing pretty damn well. With Intimidate, it's a really decent pivot into things. 70, 80, 80 bulk isn't great, but with Intimidate, you can take a couple hits, use it as a more offensive bird check, which is always nice to have a bird check of any kind. Combined with the speed, you outspeed most birds. I should say flying types, but birds just sounds better. So Medicham just has like 5, maybe 6 moves it can use, like a Volt Switch, T-Bolt, Overheat, Flamethrower, Hidden Power, Quick Attack.
Signal Beam. Signal Beam's like the only other one.
Signal Beam, right, that's a move. And then you can run like Magnet Rise and Charge Beam, which I have seen, but it's not the greatest, but Magnet Rise can be cool on pretty much any electric type that gets it. But other than that, the thing has nothing to offer, but it's a very, very fast electric type. Naturally, 135 speed is great. 135 special attack is pretty decent, so like, it just comes in and revenge kills stuff, and cleans up stuff late game. It looks silly, but, that's kind of Medicham. It's very, very one-dimensional, but if you need a fast electric type, and especially in like budget drafts, I think, not in mega drafts that have like a specific Mega Run, like in GBA, I think this is better, because there are always going to be better Mega Medicham, in my opinion at least. But it does the job of fast electric type pretty well. If you need something really fast in a team, Medicham is definitely a go-to Pokemon, and yeah, it just doesn't do much. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, no, you covered it really well. I actually used to pretty heavily dislike this thing, and then I ended up inheriting it with the GBA team that I inherited, and it was actually pretty good. Like I've always said electric fire coverage is like really, really good. That hits pretty much everything, plus you have the option, of course, to run in Power Ice. But like you said, the problem with this thing is that it is just so boring. I genuinely ran the exact same set in GBA every single time I brought it, bar maybe a different hidden power, and that's about it. Like, there's genuinely like very, very little that this thing can actually do. Like, you can run dual screens, but you can't run Light Clay, so why?
No, it only gets light screen. It doesn't even get reflect, because
that's unfortunate.
Game Freak hates every electric type.
Yeah, I guess you can. I think like Kyle one time suggested I run Roar, and I was like, no, that's dumb. You can run like sub charge, but like the set you're gonna want to run like most of the time is just the one that I have on screen right now. Like, there's very little that this thing can actually do differently. It does what it does fine. It's just like, don't expect your opponent to be confused at what this thing's gonna do, because it's gonna be pretty obvious. Like, you can slap Toxic on there to hit things that you can't normally hit, like maybe a bulky ground type or something like that, but again, it's like every Pokemon. So it's not versatile at all, but it is solid as a Pokemon. Very good fast Volt Switch user. Ability and Intimidate's really solid. It's just solid at what it does, and it's not special in any way, but it's good at what it does. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, it's a specialist.
Yeah, I would only really recommend picking this thing up if you don't have an electric type already, because like, it's the same, kind of like my same opinion on Raikou. Like, get a cheaper electric type, because they're not that much worse, and they're usually cheaper.
Yeah, I think Raikou is better, even, so, yeah.
But that being said, that's Mega Medicham. There's, again, not too much else to go over on it.
Yeah.
But now we are going to move into one of my more favorite Megas, and that is...
Oh boy.
Mega Medicham.
The Pain Train.
Yes, the Pain Train. So this thing, just a standard set. Probably like High Jump Kick, Zen Headbutt, and then maybe
Fake
dual
out.
Priority, let's say. Like Fake Out, Bullet Punch.
Yeah.
You obviously have filler moves in there. You have things like Ice Punch to hit things that are weak to it. You have things like Thunder Punch to hit certain bulky psychics like Slowbro, maybe a Starmie or something like that. It is super, super strong. Base 100 attack with huge power. Gives you 328 attack if you're adamant, and that goes up to over 650. Like 656, I think that is, which is insane. Even if you're going Jolly, you're hitting 598? Yeah, 598.
You do it.
Okay, I think I mapped that correctly. Super good. It's also one of those wall breakers that's not completely frail, like 60 HP, 85 defense, 85 speed F is kind of nice. And then it's also one of those wall breakers that's not too slow, like it has base 100 speed, plus it does have priority. And even though it's not stab priority, it still hits hard because it's coming from a really powerful attack stat. So that's fine. The only thing that switches into this thing, or the only things that switch into this thing, are bulky psychic types and some bulky ghost types. Like, I think Pythagoras can switch into this. It takes like 35% from Zen Headbutt. and then you lose huge power afterwards anyway, so you have to switch out. And then there are some bulky psychics that can switch into it, like Reuniclus, I think can switch into it. Even High Jump, though High Jump Kick still does a lot, it can switch into it. Mesprit, I think, can switch in once. What?
The obvious Cress. Yeah, Mesprit can kind of switch in,
Yeah,
but
obvious Cress. Cress is one of the better switch-ins. Cress is like one of the only things that you don't have to build physically defensive in order to switch into this thing. Like everything else I mentioned, you want fully physically defensive to take it on, but Cress, you can just build Split F and it doesn't care.
Yeah, fuck Cress.
Uxie, I remember, still takes 35% from High Jump Kick, but it can switch in at least. So, like I said, just bulky Psychics and bulky Ghosts are the only things I want to switch into this thing. Otherwise, it has coverage for everything else. If this thing got knockoff, it would be absolutely ridiculous. But that is pretty much the only drawback of this thing, is that it doesn't have knockoff. Let's see, I guess we'll just go through the move pool a little bit. There are actually some things I didn't know this thing got until I looked at it, and that's like Baton Pass. You can run like a Power Up Punch Baton Pass set. I don't know if that would ever be viable. I'm sure it definitely could, but I prefer just using this thing as a straight up wall breaker. Obviously you have fighting coverage that doesn't miss in Drain Punch, and even though Drain Punch isn't the hardest hitting thing, it does hit very hard with Mega Medicham, plus you're getting your health back. Fire Punch as well, for situations where you need that. Low Kick, probably not going to be seen as... What?
Low punny.
Right. Also gets access to Poison Jab, so you can hit fairies, and you can hit fairies very, very hard. It OKOs a lot of them, or 2-KOs all of them pretty much. And then let's see, like I said, Thunder Punch. Unfortunately, you can't use Trick, because obviously you're the Mega. Can obviously Toxic the bulky Psychics, like I mentioned earlier. And yeah, there's not too much else to go into Mega Medicham. It is just super scary. If you want to go into what pairs well with it, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about other things real quick. Baton Pass is mainly cool because of Wobbuffet. So if your opponent has a Wobbuffet, which traps the thing really effectively and can counter it and beat it and stuff like that, you can just Baton Pass out of there and be fine. Bulk Up is also cool. I remember someone running sub Bulk Up and just freezing things and then winning. Freezing Mega Sableye. So that happened. I traf. So yeah, things that Mega Medicham likes are obviously some T-Wave support is nice, but certainly the most important thing is having a good Dark type, a good pursuit trapping Dark type preferably. Because as we said, or as Mono said, the best switching are the bulky Psychic types, and if you can eliminate them or at least weaken them with a strong stab pursuit, then you're looking a lot better. So things like Crocodile are nice. I have to mention Skuntank because it's me. And just, you know what bulky good Dark types there are. I don't have to go through all of them, but even Hydreigon, even though it doesn't pursue trap, it still pressures the team similar, or the opponent's team similarly as much as Mega Medicham, because it's also a fantastic wall breaker. It's a really good wall breaking core, especially with Baton Pass and Mega Medicham, so you can Baton Pass on the Psychic type switching, stuff like that. So yeah, just do that, to have some T-Wave support, and preferably have some flying switch-ins, because, you know, flying types are gonna try to revenge kill the thing. And then you should be fine with a Mega Medicham. That's pretty much all there is. I guess Tailwind is also nice to have.
Yeah,
so,
Tailwind is kind of nice in some situations.
Zapdos as flying check plus hazard removal plus Tailwind could help. And T-Wave, so like Zapdos is cool.
Yeah, it is. Definitely, like, if you compare this thing with like Clefable or like Klefki even, T-Tar. Yeah, there you go. Clefable, Medicham, T-Tar.
Boom.
That's really
I mean, everything is good with Clefable. You know?
What?
Everything is good with Clefable.
True.
Just how it goes.
True. But yeah, that's Mega Medicham. Really good wall breaker. Don't consider this thing a sweeper. Like, unless you weaken your opponent's team enough to the point where Bullet Punch can clean up, which isn't too often, just consider this thing a wall breaker. It's not going to be sweeping teams unless your opponent's team is really slow, but it does what it does very, very well in wall breaking. So yeah, Mega Medicham. Let's see, what do we have next up on the list?
We have something broken.
We do.
Can we talk about this?
We can talk about it. Why should we not allow this in leagues?
Okay, Mega Metagross. Remember this thing should have gotten banned from OU, and now it didn't? Good times. Mega Metagross has tough plausibility and has ridiculous sets. If you can pull up the sets, I don't know if you are. On screen. 80, 150, 110 bulk for a wall-breaking, even sweeper potentially. 145 attack, 105 special attack, and 110 speed. It already screams not fun. Plus Tough Claws boost, so you get a 0.3 boost, or times 1.3 boost on your contact moves, which are most of Mega Metagross's moves. In standard play, the reason why it didn't get banned is mainly because it can have switch-ins because it has a 4 moveset syndrome. In draft format, it completely doesn't exist anymore, just because you can pick those 4 moves you need for your opponent's team, and you just plow through things. That's hard to say as a German. I'm sorry. Yeah, you have obviously your dual set, which is already really good in Mia Mesh plus Zen Headbutt. Or if you want to be boring, you can run Iron Head. Don't do that. You're gonna hit. I believe you. So you have stuff like Earthquake, you have Thunder Punch, you have Ice Punch for stuff like Lando and Gliscor. It doesn't get Fire Punch because I don't know, but it gets HP Fire, and with one of its special attack, that's all you need. Grass Knot is another tough claws boosted move to hit stuff like Swampert, which could otherwise take hits reasonably well. I think I've mentioned Earthquake, but Earthquake obviously for steel types is nice, and Hammer Arm for other steel types. What else is there to mention that's important? It gets Rock Polish and Agility, which in the right circumstances can definitely be a really good set, because if you just need 3 attacks for your opponent, then you slap on Agility, ignore all their choice scuffers and attempts to revenge kill you, and just beat them that way. It also gets like Power Punch if you don't want to rely on getting Mia Mash boost, which you will because, lucky players. Another thing is that it gets Bull Punch, so stuff like, I guess, Weavile can have an even harder time revenge killing it, even though Knockoff doesn't even kill at all. So Bull Punch is nice for priority, and then the aforementioned Ridiculous Bulk. This thing is not as easy to revenge kill as other wall breakers. Not only does it have a 110 base speed, which is really good speed here, it also has incredible bulk to the point where it just takes stab Earthquakes like they're fucking nothing, and then you die, and then Mega Metagross just kind of destroy things. This thing it just beats everything. It just doesn't have switch-ins, and it's ridiculous. I think the only league that ever I remember allowing it is the UCL, and I think it got like 5 million kills in that season. So not that the UCL is the best league to go off, but it's a bit of an idea of how good the thing can actually be. And it also gets pursued for like Ladies and stuff, which limits their viability in standard play and draft play to some extent as well. So Mega Metagross just doesn't have switch-ins, and it's stupid, and I hate it. Don't allow it. Does it help?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it. This thing is the combination of Sweeper, Wall Breaker, and bulky thingy. Yeah, like, it's so difficult to OHKO this thing. I'm pretty sure, like, Excadrill's Earthquake doesn't OHKO this thing. It takes knockoffs just fine. Like, it's stupid. It's absolutely ridiculously stupid. It's actually one of the more uncommon Megas in OU right now. I'm not 100% sure why. I know, like, obviously 4 move slot syndrome is a problem, even though you can pair that up with other mons. But, like, in OU, it wants dual stab, like Meteor Mash to kill fairies, and its hardest hitting move, of course. It wants Thunder Punch to hit things like Slowbro, as well as Skarmory. It wants Earthquake for Heatran. It wants Hammer Arm for Ferrothorn, as well as hitting Heatran neutrally. It just wants a bunch of different cover. It wants Ice Punch for Lando T and Gliscor and things like that. It wants different moves, but like you said, it doesn't have that problem in draft format. It's just, there's no team that's going to have good enough type synergy that can take on everything that Mega Metagross wants to do. Like, no matter what you have, it will have a move that will be able to beat it. Again, only thing not to KO'd by it is, like, Cresselia.
The usual.
And
always
and also like the problem is, like, a lot of things that can switch into Metagross sort of, like, don't touch it. Like, what is the Cresselia going to do to Mega Metagross? It's going to Thunder Wave it. And then if it's a sub-variant, then your Cresselia is just screwed.
Exactly.
Yeah, and...
things really stupid.
Absolutely. Like you say, Grass Knot's totally viable for things like Hippowdon and bulky ground types. Just don't allow this thing in your league. Just don't do it.
No. Trust us. We
Genuinely,
know what we're talking about.
I think it's better than Hoopa Unbound in draft format.
Yes, I agree 100%. And I would honestly prefer playing Mega Mawile over Mega Metagross, but that's probably just me.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's Mega Metagross. Granted, the shiny looks cool, so that's, I guess, the reason. But don't let it. Yeah, so, that's Mega Metagross. I believe it's my turn?
Yes.
Oh boy, alright, so, let's see, how long have we been going for? Okay, so this might take up the rest of the recording. So we got Mew here. We got Mew. Where to start with Mew?
I don't know. Just say it's a Pokemon that does things and then move on.
Okay. Mew. So Mew can do everything, pretty much.
Keep rolling. Great.
It can be a setup sweeper on both sides. Gets access to Swords Dance, Nasty Plot, Combine, Bulk Up. Has pretty much coverage for everything. In fact, I think literally coverage for everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's very bulky, obviously, with base 100 stats. That's typically what it's used for. No, you just as a bulky mon. Not even necessarily a bulky mon, but like a stall breaker. Very bulky stall breaker. Can switch into one of the things that can kind of switch into Mega Metagross if it's physically defensive. Can burn it and things like that. Just very bulky. Obviously, base 100. With like Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, Knockoff, Roost, something like that. So has access to reliable recovery. Can Baton Pass boost the things, which is really nice. Can defog.
Mm-hmm.
Can be a cleric. I'm not gonna stop scrolling through everything. So Muse is a Pokemon that can do everything, but is best on teams when it doesn't have to do anything. What I mean by that is pair this thing with good hazard removal, so you don't have to run this thing as a hazard remover every week. Pair this thing with hazard setter, so you don't have to run this thing as a stealth rocker every week. Run it with wall breakers, so it doesn't have to be an offensive Pokemon every week. Pair it with sweepers that hit hard immediately, so that you don't have to bring this thing as like a Life Orb user to hit kind of hard immediately with like 4 attacks. Just build a team so that Mew doesn't have to do anything. You can just look at each individual team, build a team of 5 mons, and then throw Mew at the end of it, and then just be like, okay, this is the set that deals with his team the best. It is setup Mew is one of my favorite sets, as you know. So you've had to deal with Swords Dance, 2 attacks, yeah.
I hate you.
So like Swords Dance, 2 attacks, Roost is probably my favorite set, or just Nasty Plot, 2 attacks, Roost, something along those lines.
That's really bad.
Defensive Mew is also still like really, really good. Like bulky psychics in general I really like, and this thing functioned perfectly, having access to all 3 status moves, having access to instant recovery, having access to taunt, having access to multiple different offensive moves so that you can have coverage for whatever your status move cannot hit. There's a lot of different things this thing can do, obviously, but I think the people have trouble with this mon because it's just kind of sometimes awkward to build with, and it's difficult to build with.
Yeah.
Like, there will be teams where it's like, even though your opponent has no idea what Muse set you're gonna bring, you also have no idea what Muse set you're gonna bring, so it can be difficult. Sometimes it can just end up not doing a lot, because like, it's even hard to like talk about, because it's like, it doesn't hit hard right off the bat, unless you're running like Specs or a Life Orb or something like that, and even then it's not going to be hitting super hard with base 100 special attack, and if it's Life Orb, your opponent's going to have more than likely have an easier time dealing with it offensively, because 100 speed is not super fast. This is difficult. This is like, it's very difficult to talk about.
Yeah.
You go ahead. Go. Help
I
me.
mean, yeah, it's hard. But I've used Mew a little bit, and I've had the issue of like coming up with a set in the first place, because as you said, it can do almost absolutely everything that humans it doesn't get, but every TM, almost every tutor move. So it's really hard to come up with a set to be like, okay, Mew, I need you to do this thing. But it's really nice Pokemon to have to deal with really gross defensive core, so you don't have anything else can break a certain core. Mew can do that. And as someone who has played Mew a couple times and has always had issues with it, I actually know I Troy let it in on a knockoff, so it just kind of died. But I had issues occasionally. It's a Pokemon that makes your opponent panic in a way, because they have no idea what it's gonna be, and Mew can beat every Pokemon in the game 1v1. It just can, and that's a problem for you in play, because as much as you're like, okay, I have this fast, strong, dark, or ghost type, there's like one strong, fast ghost type, whatever. Mew can just be like, yeah, but I have a berry and I just OHKO you back because I have all the coverage in the world. And that's a problem. The thing is really hard to revenge kill, it's really hard to check defensively because it's almost impossible until it's already too late, as Mono has proven in week 1. Tears. And I think people always have this discussion about, oh no, but you can't just run defensive Mew every week. Yes, you can. Because it has no other Pokemon that does run the same defensive set so effectively as Mew. And I think defensive or the stall breaker Mew can be brought every week, or almost every week. and it's viable, and I think it's fair to draft it early just for that purpose, because that set is so incredibly good and incredibly hard to break. And people are probably still not going to prep for like specifically Stall Breaker Mew. Usually in prep, people are like, okay, I have things that can hit Mew, let's just see what happens. So like bringing Stall Breaker Mew to most games is not a bad thing at all. I think a friend of mine, Bob, did that, and he won the championship with mainly bringing Stall Breaker Mew on his team because it's just so good, it's so reliable, it always does the job, and it's a huge nuisance to your opponent's team. So Mew is just, I think it's harder to prep for, or it's better to have it just so your opponent has a hard time prepping and to kind of scare your opponent. It's not going to be your MVP most of the time, at least not in kills, probably. If it is, then kudos to you. But it's always going to be a huge threat to your opponent, a huge nuisance, and it does its job usually. It's like, yeah.
Absolutely. I think to end off on Mew, I'm probably just going to go over some of the sets that have been used or that can be used depending on the matchup, just to give some people ideas. We'll start with the more standard one, which is especially defensive, or physically defensive if you want, depending on matchup, with like knockoff, Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, Roost. You can run, if your opponent doesn't have a dark type, my favorite set is Sub, Calm Mind, Roost, Psyshock.
Yeah.
Like even like one of my opponents had like a Bronzonger, whatever, it didn't matter, it's set up all over it anyway. There is the 4 attacks, or the 3 attacks, however many you need, Extra Belt version, or Life Orb version, where you can just slap on attacks to hit things very hard, and you can act as a lure. Like if your opponent switches in Ferrothorn, you Fire Blast it, either they switch in their Fairy, you Gunk Shot it, they switch in their Quad Weakness, you put a move on there that hits it Quad Weak. Even like it has low kick for dark types, Drain Punch, Aura Sphere. Colbur Berry is also very useful as always. Like you can take a Weavile knockoff very well, hit it with a Drain Punch. Calm Mind or Bulk Up or Rock Polish, and then pair it with Baton Pass. That can really throw people off guard because you don't look at Mew and think immediately, okay, it's going to be a Baton Pass set. So you can definitely catch people off guard, and you can use that. Let's see, anything else?
I mean, the SD Nasty Blood sets have been used. I think Ellie did a very good job with that.
Definitely, you can run U-turn as well to get out of being trapped, or just to U-turn out. Trick sets are totally viable. Like there's very little that's not viable with Mew. It's just, again, just figuring out what set works, because it's gonna have 4-move slot syndrome a lot of the time. You're gonna want recovery. You're gonna want some sort of setup. You're gonna want attacking moves, or you're gonna be bulky. It does a lot. Try it out for yourself if you think you're creative enough, and if you think you can build a proper team around it. Like I think we went over what type of team support it wants. Pursuit Trapper, immediate offense, wall breaking, other bulky mons. Just alleviate, basically like draft. If you're gonna draft Mew, probably draft it round 1, and then build a team as best as you can around Mew, kind of pretending like you don't have Mew. Like just get all of the things that you need on a team, and then have Mew there as something that it can do whatever it wants.
And the wild card, pretty much.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we're gonna finish up talking on Mew. We went over it for quite a while, but now you are going to take it with Mega Pinsir.
Cool. Mega Pinsir is a threat and a half. With Aerialate and 155 attack, which is a ridiculous stat. And 105 speed, the thing is an incredible wall breaker and an incredible sweeper because it does get quick attack, it does get sword stance. So late game, the thing is pretty much unstoppable. I say pretty much unstoppable, but very hard to stop. Added by its really good bulk in 120-90 defenses. 65 HP is not that great, but defenses make up for it. So it can take a couple hidden power rocks, a couple unstep rock slides and stuff, if necessary. If not, you can invest into it a little bit. And it gets all the coverage it needs pretty much. I don't think there's any coverage moves it really wants that it doesn't get. It gets Close Combat, it gets Earthquake, it gets Stone Edge for things like Zapdos. It even gets Knockoff, which is occasionally helpful against like Bronzong and things like that. It obviously gets its secondary stab and X-Scissor, which is rarely used, but in some matchups it can definitely be helpful. And if you just absolutely want to murder things, it gets Double Edge. Aerialate boosted Double Edge is probably going to kill like 15 Pokemon at once. And before it Mega Evolves, if you're in a league that doesn't have to, where you don't have to Mega Evolve first turn, it has the option of running Moxie. which is pretty much a free attack boost if the right circumstances are there. Because your opponent doesn't want to switch out on Mega Pinsir and allow it to set up. So you're usually going to sack off things to it. And that's pretty valuable. So your opponent doesn't have sacks later on for other things, and that's really cool. There's also like Hypercut, where your opponent has an Intimidate Pokemon, so they can send it in freely. I mean, they can, but they don't get a drop, and that's really nice. Which I think is the usual ability in OU, just because Land OT is a thing that exists. So yeah, Mega Pinsir just breaks things in half. It's a really good SD sweep. It's a really good just straight up wall breaker. If you don't think you can sweep your opponent's team, you can just go straight like SD and try to hurt things without trying to sweep. In terms of support, very obvious, get the best hazard removal options you can. Preferably like 2-3 good to decent hazard removal options. Because if rocks are up, Mega Pinsir isn't quite as happy, it's harder to set up an SD. And yeah, it also likes Volturn, just because you can get this monster in after Volt Switch or U-turn and then just plop something on its head. Yeah, Facade is also a cool option if you get burned and stuff, you're worried about a bulky water type that you can set up on. You can Facade them at +2 and then they just die. And yeah, I like Mega Pinsir kind of. I'm probably never going to draft it because it forces you to bring hazard removal and I don't like that. But it's a fantastic Pokemon, a massive threat. Don't bring Stealth Rocks on it.
It's a very good thing to finish that with. Yeah, Mega Pinsir is always one of those Pokemon that's so scary. Flying Stab is always really spammable and is just always really solid, and it has close combat and Earthquake for the things that resist flying, which is always really good, and that's coming off a base 155 attack stat boosted return. It actually, before setup, it hits harder than Mega Salamence, which is incredible.
Ridiculous.
It is incredibly strong. Like you said, it does have its obvious weaknesses, like the 4x rock weakness and no access to reliable recovery is obviously like really crappy, but that's why you mentioned bring hazard removal. Definitely pair this thing with once again Hazard Stack. I'm gonna say that with literally everything, get over it. Hazard Stack, and then definitely solid ground type to deal with certain electric types, just because electric types typically outspeed this thing, like Raikou, Jolteon, even crappier ones like Zebstrika, Raichu. They all outspeed this thing and can hit it hard with an electric move. So definitely a solid ground type to go along with that. Definitely good Stone Edge switch in, so like good ground type. Yeah, same thing. Good. Okay, there you go. It is...
Don't get Manatee with it. It's scary.
I think how Mega Pinsir goes is that in seasons it usually does like a ton, like it's up there in the top MVP rankings, and then for some coaches it just does nothing.
I mean, that's on the coaches though.
Yeah,
I think only one
but
person.
Like, what I'm trying to say is it's not really the mon for everybody.
Yeah, that's true.
But like, it is really good. Like I said, it is very bulky. Like, and it lives some unstabbed rock slides, which is always really nice. And you can even set up an SD against a lot of them, barring getting flinched, of course. And before you Mega, you do have that only 1x weakness to rocks. So typically the best way to bring this in is if there are rocks up, just wait to bring it in until your opponent's team is weakened enough to be picked off by quick attack, or if there are no hazards on your side of the field, just send this in whenever you get a free chance and just click return and watch things die, because there's not a lot that can switch into this thing.
Yep.
So yeah, that is Mega Pinsir. Super good.
Very straightforward Pokemon.
Absolutely. I think this is like one of the leading things in kills in the GBA.
I think it actually is #1 with maybe like Terrakion, something like
maybe,
that.
But Terrakion like hasn't done much in the last 2 seasons, so I'm not entirely sure. So with that being said, we've been going for 43 minutes. We can keep going a little bit longer. We are going to move on to Raikou. Oh goody. Okay, so Raikou is like not a bad Pokemon at all. Obviously, 115 speed's really nice. 115 special attack's pretty good. 100 Spadef, 90 HP, 75 defenses. Has a usable attack stat for like extreme speed if you ever want to run that. So, but I'm not. What?
Check those Mega Pinsers when you weaken.
But I'll just get at it. I'm not the biggest fan of Raikou. Like, it's not a bad Pokemon. It's just I would always spend my money elsewhere on higher tier mons, and then I would get like a lower tier electric type, just because like something like Jolteon, it's worse than Raikou, but it's not that much worse than Raikou. Like you're getting
Jolteon's Wild Slash. I hate Jolteon.
You're getting more speed. You're getting arguably a better ability in Volt Absorb, which Raikou does not get. It only gets pressure. Volt Absorb is not released. You're getting basically the same coverage. The only thing you're losing out on is Calm Mind. And then you're losing out on a little bit of power, but then it just becomes a debate between do you want power or speed. Something like Mega Manectric, like we went over, gets fire coverage. And that in itself, that just by itself is always really good. Things like Heliolisk, you can switch into Scalds and be immune to them, and your coverage is really good. The Thundies, your coverage is ridiculous, although Thundies are probably in a world all of its own.
Yes.
Like even like not as good electric types, like electric types typically do everything you need them to do. I never typically see the point on spending a lot of them on Raikou. Just because Raikou isn't that special compared to a lot of other electric types. Like, the only real set that this thing can do that other electric types can't do is Sub-Calm Mind, which, while it is good, your matchup has to be good enough to the point where where 2 attacks are good enough, and with an electric type attack being one of them, you need something to hit your opponent's ground type. And HP Ice, yes, but HP Ice is kind of weak, and even though 115 special attack is pretty good, it's not overwhelming for teams, like, ever.
Yeah.
That being said, it is good. Assault Vest is always good to be a relatively bulky, fast pivot. There are teams, once you get rid of the ground type, you can just spam a powerful Thunderbolt and then you're good. It does have the option of running Aura Sphere, but then if you have to run Aura Sphere, then you're running a Rash Nature, you absolutely have to. And then you are being outsped by base 100s, so like, if your opponent has like an Excadrill and a Manaphy, let's say, you want Aura Sphere, and you're going to have the electric move, and their Manaphy is running max speed, they're now outspeeding you, and you have a +3 Manaphy that you have 1 less check to. So it's like everything that is good about this thing, there's also like a drawback that just kind of turns me away from it. Especially because Raikou is typically relatively expensive in leagues, and I don't ever think it's worth the price.
Yeah. I like Raikou a little bit more than you, but I still would never pick it for the price or the tier that it's in, no matter what draft form it is. Make a free draft, yeah. Other drafts, no. Oh, almost dying. Cool. It has good bulk, which is a huge advantage over most other electric types because they all, well, a lot of them just kind of flip when you look at them. Die when you flip them. Whatever. Words, English is hard. Like Heliolisk, Jolteon, they're really, really frail. Raikou can take a couple hits with 90, 75, 100 bulk. But it's just kind of underwhelming. It really is. I'm a big fan of electric types that have good coverage, so I love the Thundies, obviously. I love Heliolisk, and Raikou just isn't really one of them. Like, it gets Aura Sphere and Extrasensory and Shadow Ball and those things, but they're not great. They're cool to have, but they don't make it amazing. It's like, I'm not a lover of it. It gets dual screens as well, which is interesting. It gets Magnetized, just like Mega Manectric. So we have one of those gimmick options you can run maybe once in 100 games. But, I don't know. Raikou is there, it's cool. I'm not saying it's a bad Pokemon by any means. I just personally also don't think it's that much worth of a high tier pick. But it's a fun Pokemon because Calm Mind 3 attacks is also a good set.
Definitely.
Pretty much that.
If there are any teams I can definitely support this thing on, it would be something like Kelly's current PPL team. Because he obviously has a rain team, and what you want on a rain team, since you're going to have like weather sweepers, and most of them are water types, because rain and such, is a decent check to electric types. And that with Raikou's extra bulk, the one benefit that it has over other electric types, or the one bigger benefit over electric types that it does have, that's going to be really nice as a neutral switch into other electric types. Like, this
I think it's Weather Ball.
Yeah, this thing, yeah, it does get Weather Ball, which is a boosted water type attack, so it makes your opponent's ground type not a great switch in. So I can definitely see it on things like other rain teams. But even then, he picked it up like round 6 and like not that early, so it's like kind of situational in that aspect. But it is good. Just I would not recommend picking it in a draft based or in a pricing based thingy because it's not typically worth it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Do we go one more?
We will go one more, and then we will be done.
Alright.
And the one more is
Rotomwash.
Oh, goody.
Yay. One of my new, I wouldn't say favorites, but I've started to really like the thing because I have it in PPL right now. I used to think it's kind of boring and it doesn't do much, and it's a water type, like a bulky water type without recovery, and that's true. All the things are somewhat true, but it's not that boring. That's one thing that isn't super duper true. I think I've brought Assault Vest, I've brought Specs, I've brought bulky sets in those couple of games that I've brought it, so Metagross is really cool. I think everyone knows what it usually does. It's a bulky pivot, it's a Volt Switcher, it spams Will-O-Wisp, it spams Hydro Pump and misses, it clicks T-Volt occasionally, maybe once per game, and it has good bulk, 50, 107, 107 bulk, it's pretty decent. Their base HP is really low, but it helps with one of its only forms of recovery outside of rest, and that is Pain Split. With a Pokemon that has low HP, Pain Split is a lot more viable than, let's say, Stunfisk, which also has Pain Split as the only recovery option. Don't know why I said Stunfisk. I guess it's whatever. So another thing with Rotomwash is that it's really not fun to switch into for your opponent. It does have 105 special attack, so it hits decently hard. And it does not only have Volt Switch to gain initiative, but also has its secondary Water Step and Hydro Pump. So most ground types just don't want to switch into it, and you can freely gain momentum on your opponent. When you come in on your opponent's bulky Water type, on their Flying type, or whatever else doesn't want to take a Volt Switch, you gain initiative for free. And if they go into their ground type, you kind of just beat it because you have Levitate, you have a Water Step, you just click Hydro Pump and they die. Whereas of course they have something like a Gastron or a Seismitoad, which don't care about Rotomwash too much. This thing is really cool in that regard. It's a really good flying check, and there are not many bird or flying checks, and Rotomwash is arguably one of the best because of its typing, natural bulk and stuff like that, and the ability to levitate, which prevents it from getting hit by like ground moves, which how many flying types get ground moves? Not many. But still, it's cool. It also gets, of course, T-Wave. So T-Wave spam is always good. Gets Tricks. You can run a Trick Scarf set, which is also always really nice to have. And dual screens. It's another dual screen setup, which is, I don't think I've ever seen a dual screen Rotom. Probably have. But that's another cool option. It gets a couple weird moves. Not weird, but it gets a couple other options like Hex and Shadow Ball because it is a ghost type some way, shape, or form. And Signal Beam. So there's a couple other coverage options which you usually won't need. If you have any other coverage, it's probably going to be a Hidden Power Ice or something like this, or Grass. So yeah, I like Rotomwash a lot. It's a really good pivot. It's not going to stay around for the whole game usually because it's going to get worn down by status or just by taking repeated hits, but it's going to annoy your opponent. It's going to give you initiative. It's going to get chip damage off on your opponent, and that's really valuable. Another cool move is Foul Play, which I think I've brought this season. I'm pretty sure I did. So yeah, it's another cool move you can run if something in your opponent's end just doesn't care about any of your other moves. You just run Foul Play and hit them that way. And yeah, I like Rotomwash. It's a cool guy. It's a pivot. Pivots are good.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, you failed to mention the most important Rotomwash set, which is of course the Sucker Punch variant.
True. Very true. Best set.
But Rotomwash, I think, in draft format is not as good defensively as it is in standard, just because it's like it's super common in standard is just the general switch into a lot of different things. Like its typing plus its ability make it only weak to Grass and Mold Breaker EQ. Mold Breaker EQ not the most common thing. Grass also not super common offensively. But I think it is better in draft format than in standard play in terms of offensiveness. It is a very good Choice Scarf user, like you said. You can run a Solve Vest on this thing if you want, if you don't mind not having Will-O-Wisp, T-Wave, or Pain Split, or any of those things. I have also, I haven't used it before, but I've recommended Specs to people. I remember Specs Hydro Pump 2 KO's non-Assault Vested Tangrowth, which was really cool to see. I believe Christian ended up doing that in UCL. Wonder who gave him that idea. But also, there are other options. Well, like you said, it does get things like Dark Pulse, Shadow Ball, Hex. Because in Gen 4, it actually used to be a Ghost type. The base form of Rotom, just regular old Rotom, is a Ghost type, and it possesses a washing machine, because that's where ghosts want to live. It has a lot of different options. Subsplit is an option, not as viable as it was in Gen 4, but still definitely an option, because it can be very annoying. Thunder Wave is always nice, just to cripple things like Charizard X, I know. Like, otherwise Charizard X would be able to set up all over you and certain other things, plus Thunder Wave is Thunder Wave. And if you're in a league with this thing, or you're about to start a league, definitely get your usage out of Thunder Wave until Sun and Moon comes out, when they nerf it.
Spoilers.
Yeah. Sorry, spoilers, whatever. Oh, probably not, but whatever. Trick is also really nice to cripple certain things. Like, there are things that you can just switch in a Rotom, and you can trick them and then cripple them, which is always fun. Good Scarf for a good Specs user. Still very good defensive pivot, even though not as good in standard play. I would definitely recommend this thing to teams. Similar to Manaphy, pick up another bulky water alongside this thing. Like a water Grass is always good, or like just another offensive water, because like this isn't, I wouldn't really consider this thing a bulky water, even though it is bulky and is a water type. It's more of either an offensive water electric or a defensive pivot or an offensive pivot. I wouldn't consider it necessarily like a bulky water in the traditional sense.
Yeah,
That makes
sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't get scald, so it's not a bulky
Yeah, that's
water
a good point. It doesn't get scald. You can't scald things. Therefore,
I mean, you wouldn't get burnt anyway, so it doesn't matter.
good point. Yeah. Is there anything else to go over with Rotom? I think we covered everything. Dual screens, specs, scarf.
I guess it's a better Scarfer than most other electric types, because again, ground types don't want to switch in, so you can switch a little bit more freely.
Yeah, very true.
Initiative is always cool. Yeah.
You can run Psych Up. Has anyone ever done that? You can run Psych Up, beat Suicune.
I think Frank brought that once
That's cool.
for Manaphy or something. Was it
Like
against
it.
me? If you did, it was against me.
Yeah, like you said, it is really annoying to switch into because like water electric coverage really good. Can't switch in your ground type. You can switch in your grass type, but then you're gonna get burnt by Will-O-Wisp. So it's like really annoying to deal with, or it can be like really good offensively. So just solid mon to pick up. Definitely a solid mon to pick up.
Yeah.
Fits a lot of different roles.
Best switching.
So yeah, that's Rotomwash, and I think we'll call it there for this episode. Thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Let us know in the comment section below what your suggestions to make this series better. Also, once again, feel free to let us know if you disagree with our opinions on each individual mon. Of course, you'd be wrong in doing so because we are perfect, but it's fine. Just get it out of your system.
You're right. You're right.
Definitely leave a like if you enjoyed, and Schady, if you want to do your thingy, you can go ahead.
I don't know what my thingy is, but check
Say
out
goodbye.
my channel.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, check out Shady's channel in the description below. Goodbye.